You are listening to the 5 a.m. podcast, and today is your day. Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast, where we explore transformative ideas that inspire growth and meaningful change. Today, we're joined by a guest who's discovered a unique intersection between technology, creativity, and mindfulness, and this has been the power to transform daily experiences. Well, who's our guest today? Joe Van Wyk brings over 3 decades of expertise as a professional photographer, visual storyteller, and graphic designer. He's bringing all of this to what's going to be a wonderful conversation. But what makes Joe's work truly remarkable is how he's, let's say, democratized the therapeutic power of photography through the devices most of us carry with us every day, our smartphones. After navigating his own journey through depression and anxiety, Joe discovered that intentional smartphone photography could serve as an active creative form of mindfulness, a way to break negative thought patterns and reconnect with the present moment, with his own creativity and with his spiritual foundations. He has a book called The Mindful Photography Field Guide, and it offers beginner-friendly practices that transform the ordinary act of taking photos into a powerful tool for mental wellness. Through approaches like focus, capture, shine method, Joe provides accessible ways for anyone, regardless of photographic experience, to cultivate presence, gratitude, and inner peace amongst life's challenges. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to explore how the camera in your pocket can become a gateway to deeper awareness, creative expression, and even spiritual connection. Joe, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the 5 a.m. podcast. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you having me on, and hello to all your guests.
Yes. Well, thanks so much. I'm so glad that we could meet, and some of that thanks, or a lot of it maybe, goes to podmatch.com. So we're very thankful for that platform as well in the business that we're in. And before we dive into your approach to mindful photography, can you share your personal experience that led you to discover this healing potential of intentional smartphone photography during maybe your struggles with depression and anxiety?
You bet. I'm grateful for the opportunity. So this is the book. It was published a year ago, and I thought that would be the culmination of. But like my writing coach told me, now's when the hard part starts. Now's the time when I'm putting myself out there to the world and being vulnerable about that story. So the book is a culmination of what I learned through some really, really difficult times of depression and anxiety. I'm here in the beautiful Colorado mountains right now, and I've lived here for 5 years. I moved here after a sudden divorce and life-shattering situation 5 years ago. Fortunately, at the time, I was well on my way to kind of some of the emotional resilience and deeper spiritual connect that I had with Christ through it all. And so I can tell you a little bit about that story.
Sure.
Okay. Well, so say 15 years ago or so, I remarried. I moved from one big city to another big city, where I'd lived for most of my life. And while I was there in this new marriage and all I thought was a fairy tale, it ended up turning into a nightmare. And I can't even, like, for me to even like pin it on this reason or that, it seems to cheapen it. I think it had a lot to do with purpose, and I had lost my hope and purpose, but I fell into a horrific suicidal depression.
Wow.
And I was part of that whole psychiatric just merry-go-round of doctors and medications and procedures, and brutal. It was really, really rough. But while I was doing that, again, I have a long career in photography, videography, graphic design, and I started really getting into street photography and specifically
Mm.
these street portraits. So
Yeah.
I'd approach people, all these colorful characters in the street, and I hit them up for their portrait and shoot, shoot, shoot. I'd interact with them and publish that on social media, and
Mm-hmm.
I put a GoPro on top of my camera and record these interactions, how I work with people. And I would notice that when I'd get back into the car after an experience like that, like I was just on fire, man, like complete adrenaline rush. And
Yeah.
I noticed how it was really transporting me to a whole different, it was different than just a mindset. It was a
Yeah.
different spiritual plane, and that connection with people and nitty gritty. This happened to be Austin and nitty gritty streets in Austin. And so what I was tapping into is catching the present moment awareness and what it's like to drop into my body and be
Mm.
absorbed in this active creative form of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Um, so here my life is just collapsing in this depression that I never thought I'd get out of. I'd been pretty much a lifelong Christian. Um, and I just was not my faith wasn't working. The
Yeah.
church wasn't working, all their fault. I don't know. Again, to try to explain it all is to deny God's sovereign hand, because I
Mm.
know the whole time I was being nudged down this road. I found this church in Austin, funky Austin, typical, that of a
Yeah.
bunch of Christian believers who are also into meditation,
Okay.
Christians who meditate too. And they followed this Father Thomas Keating and centering prayer,
Yeah.
and that practice that had been done um, by monks and whatnot in
Uh-huh.
these in
Yeah.
monastic traditions for some time. And that was kind of the beginning of this, is combining my
Wow.
faith with mindfulness and photography. And I wanted it to be super accessible.
Mm.
And so it is indeed 15 smartphone photography practices for inner
Right.
peace. I didn't want it to be accessible just because, oh, well, if you don't have to invest in a fancy
Right.
camera. Not, I mean, accessible like this thing is in my pocket. And when
Uh-huh.
I get emotionally dysregulated and start to spiral, boom, I'll take you through that process. But first thing I do is turn this thing on airplane mode, turn it into a simple camera, and then
Wow.
there's a kind of a methodology to take you into next to get you centered and out of that dysregulation or depression, anxiety
Right.
spiral.
Yeah, and there's so much of the things around us that can induce that spiral. And as you were talking about this group of disciples, let's say in Austin, of made me think of the Desert Fathers. And a little shout out to the Desert Fathers for our listeners. If you really want to read some great, I don't know if you, I guess you could say mystic Christianity. Oh man, read the Desert Fathers. Some of those stories are life changing, and you think, wow, how come I haven't heard of this before? Well, because it's life changing, and it'll get you on a different path outside of that. Let's say the industry. And another exercise, of course, would would be studying making merchandise of people in the scriptures and other places. And then when you read the Desert Fathers or some of the Apocrypha, man, it just changes your focus on that whole Christian industry and all that it can be in some cases. That's a rabbit trail. Totally threw my fishing hook into the weeds there, but I wanted to ask you about to dig into that three-step method in your book where you introduce that focus, capture, and shine.
I think such an important concept that we find in what we call mindfulness. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
call it presence,
Yeah.
waking up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're listening right now, I don't know if you've ever had your consciousness light turned on,
Mm.
like what it's like to all of a sudden go, oh, okay, I'm here now in my physical body, like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5 things you can see,
Yes.
4 things you can hear, and it really dropping into our senses, our God-given
Yeah.
senses, the way that we pick up on this world, and like losing yourself even in a few seconds
Yeah.
of no thought,
Right.
just presence.
Yeah.
Um, I have to shout out. I know I'm going to totally get lost. Your question here, focus, capture, shine. We're going to go there. I'm just going
Yes.
to say something that I heard last week, last Sunday.
Tell it like it is.
I've I've think in the few years that I've gone to this little church here that I've gone to that I've spoken up and kind of said my piece about how I think Christians really need to get a grip on this presence thing.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And we tend to be, you know, people, humans, it's so cliche, but humans doing versus humans
Yes.
being.
Yeah.
Some people don't even have a concept of what it's like to sit with God
Mm-hmm.
in just presence. And so I've trained to be a little influence like that.
Yeah.
My pastor, right? So Sunday, typical the way God works. He was really advocating for this in his message, and he said something that I've never heard. I've never heard it put this way before, that I know is going to change my quiet time practice
Right.
forever. Like, we talk about having our quiet time, and I'm so faithful about my quiet time, but so many times, man, I mean, within minutes, I'm writing down my to-do list. I'm reading
Mm-hmm.
my Bible. I'm like desperate for some message that's going to perk me up. And it's like, and then it turns into this begging session for God. Like, come on, God, please be with me now.
Uh-huh.
Lord, please, dear God, give me some peace.
Yeah.
And this begging relationship. Well, I turned to this before we started. He based this sermon on, there's a psalm. I've never heard of this one before. It's Psalm 131, and these psalms of ascents. When I
Oh,
guess when
yes.
they were going to Jerusalem, there's this section of
Okay.
these psalms of ascents that David wrote, as in ascent, ascending, ascent.
Yeah.
And it says, my heart is not proud, O Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me, but I have stilled and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. And he talked about that. I mean, this made me want to just crawl under the chair. Like he was like calling me out.
Uh-huh.
Babies, I never knew this. Babies have this thing that they do called rooting. Have you ever heard of
Okay.
rooting?
No.
Okay, well, if you touch an infant's face, touch it right there, it's going to turn. Anything that it's touching, that it's going to think is its mom to nurse from.
Right. Yeah.
And so what David is tapping into, like a weaned child with its mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. What this is a child that's no longer doing that.
Ah. Wow.
Where, God,
Just
please, oh my God, I'm hurting so much. I'm so lonely right now. God, please help me, help me. Versus, here's the key that what he said, party. Okay, but once again with David, this weaned child with its mother,
yeah. Yeah.
still a child.
Yeah.
But that child's now sitting in mom's lap. Mama bear ain't gonna let anybody
Mm.
get to that baby. And he's just being there with his nurturing mother.
Yeah.
And the way that Pastor Jim put this was, imagine just spending time with God and saying, Lord, I'm gonna spend some time with you, but I gotta tell you, I'm not gonna be asking you for anything today.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be in your presence, man. Can I be in your presence without asking or begging or asking you to fix anything or
Right.
provide anything for me?
Yeah.
Um, and that's really caused a shift in me.
Right.
What a beautiful embodiment
It is.
of mindfulness, because you are stating the intention that, you know what, God, your presence is enough.
Yeah.
And folks, you see, obviously, I'm living in a little travel trailer. I've got my doodle over there. I used to live really high on the hog, man. And I went through this unexpected divorce and I was shoved out into this amazing hero's journey adventure that I've been on. And
Mm.
right now I'm in a place where I am thanking God for everything in my life. I mean, dear God, I live, yeah, this little trailer I live in, but I'm in the Colorado mountains. There's a creek rushing by over there. God's
Yeah.
given me this time of
Mm.
solitude and loneliness, but time to heal
Wow.
through this whole process, and my relationship with him has just gotten so much deeper.
Right.
So back to the process, none of this would have happened
Mm.
except for this refiner's fire that I went through. And I had to really get down to the bare bones of, hey, I have my faith and I have a real clear idea of what
Mm-hmm.
that is, and I want to write a book that's going to relate to Christians, to Jews, to Muslims, to whatever someone's faith tradition is. Mindfulness can accentuate that and increase our presence and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So what first thing is in embracing technology, and the technology that is always with us. We're First step is we're taking the world's greatest distraction device
Yeah.
and turning that sucker on airplane mode.
Yes.
Just click that thing and boom. Now I'm unjacked,
Yeah.
and I'm going to be a lot less likely to get lost into where I get lost into in my
Mm-hmm.
smartphone. So I put it onto airplane mode. I'm saying to God, the world, and myself, I mean business. I'm going to take a quick minute here for a practice to get centered again.
Mm.
And then the focus, capture, shine process is, first we focus on body and surround it before we take a shot, or what am I going to go out and shoot. Take
Mm-hmm.
this hand, put it on your belly, your heart. 3 belly breaths, like speaking of a mother, like a
Yes.
nurturing mom, self-nurturing. That's so important for those of us who are highly sensitive and who struggle with depression and anxiety. Self-nurture, not reaching for something external to
Mm-hmm.
make me feel better, but just be able to self-soothe.
Yeah.
And so, hand on the heart, deep, the 3 belly breaths. And then the capture part of it, after those 3 belly breaths, opening our eyes, and instead of capturing just a pretty picture, we're really just capturing the present moment. Like,
Yes.
I just thought of a shot right now. I just read that beautiful psalm to you, and I can
Mm-hmm.
think of taking my phone at kind of in an extreme angle and taking a shot, part of it out of focus, of that Psalm
Right.
131, and editing it just so, and then send it. Third step, shine your light and bless someone.
Mm.
Send that to someone with a, man, I was just on this podcast and this psalm came up, and I don't know what it is, but you came to my mind, and I want you to know that I really love you. And this is you right here to me. This is
Yeah.
someone, that's what you mean to me. Have a great day. That process. I mean, when we are embodying the great commandment,
Yeah.
that's it. That's when you go, like what I was experiencing in the
Mm-hmm.
car after those photography sessions. I was experiencing that love and interaction. And
Yeah.
we're wired that way. God
Yes.
wired, when we're not passing it on, and it's just sort of a stagnant pond without the water flowing
Mm-hmm.
through it, we're not in God's will. He wants us to love our neighbors like ourselves.
Turn everyday teaching moments into a valuable lesson about long-term wealth preservation. Gold prices have historically risen during economic uncertainty. The time is now. Visit mindstandgold.com today and secure your family's future with your first gold purchase. Your children's financial future is too important to delay. Start their golden future at mindstandgold.com. Well, one of the there's like so many roads we could shoot off of right now in this conversation, and I want to talk to you about your YouTube channel and a recent video that you just dropped. but before that, as you were talking about this idea of this child that no longer reacts to the stimulus of getting fed, and how so many people, the reason they smoke cigarettes goes back to breastfeeding experiences,
No,
and not getting out of that mode. But I know my wife and I listen to a lot of Neville Goddard, and just when you understand how God set things up and how Jesus, so many things are like they're said, but if you don't have your catcher on and you're not really digging in, Jesus never said to make converts. He said to make disciples. It's like we're all in the club. It's just we need to understand that there's this different way of stopping reacting to the food source or the touches that come on your face, and then you can just be still and you can be like, I get it now. I can hear the heartbeat of creation of God. I know some people call it the universe. We call it creation. Just like some people will say manifesting, we call it creating because we're co-creators. And we think that the same spirit and the same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead lives in us bodily, man, there's a lot of human potential that has remained untapped for thousands of years. And just so exciting. But I want to talk to you about this video that you had on your YouTube. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to bookmark uh, Joe
it's
Van Wyk,
yeah, it's Joe Van Wyk. No big deal.
White,
Joe,
gotcha,
so it's at JoeVanWyk. But if you just search for Joe Van Wyk on YouTube, you'll find me. And my website is at joevanwyk.com as well as mindfulphotography.org. So kind of those
perfect.
are some of my locations. And um so you're going to find on my YouTube channel, and by the way, okay, here's my first pitch
Yes.
to your listeners. It means so much when you like, subscribe, and comment.
Mm.
Like all of us who create content
Yes.
struggle with that so much, like asking for the sale or whatever. And
Yep.
so the best way I know how to do it is it really, really helps. And if you resonate with that message, it's going to mean that you're going to get to see it more often, but other
Hmm.
people are too.
That's right.
So what you're going to find on my YouTube channel are a lot of very tactical, practical, and some entertaining ways to use smartphone photography for inner peace and presence and to
Hmm.
intervene on yourself. And also you're going to get a lot of from a, serious career pro photographer who's actually selling off on most, if not all, of my pro gear. This is how all in on smartphone photography I've
Mm.
become. Um, you're going to get a lot of really, really practical tips on smartphone photography.
Wow.
So, my heart is for those of you who are out there struggling with depression and anxiety,
Hmm.
most likely men. Women too, but I think I do have a heart for men, especially with what I've experienced in this stage of life. All good. But even though I am in this stage of life on my YouTube channel, my viewers are skewed pretty young.
Mm.
The top of the bell is kind of in the mid 30s
Yeah.
range.
Same for
So,
us.
so is that right?
Yep.
So you're gonna see these tactical, practical ways to use smartphone photography for inner peace. And because my goal is to truly help people the way I've been helped, like I made a commitment to God, myself, and to close people
Uh-huh.
around me that I would not teach a single thing in this book that didn't actually work for me.
Mm.
And so I would be like holding something back if I didn't let you and your listeners in on this other dimension
Mm.
of things that quote work for me to handle this, God, this monkey mind mind
Yeah.
that's just so active and nuts. And that's AI.
Yeah.
So my latest video at Joe Van Wyk on my YouTube channel, I'm doing videos now in this format where I take a little tripod and set this phone up here and I'm shooting myself there. And I'm demonstrating this interaction with ChatGPT in advanced voice mode
Mm.
to help me through whatever challenge I'm going through right now, help me, ideaphoria, brainstorming,
Yep.
organizing ideas. I max out my advanced voicemail quota every
Yeah.
day. And I've actually created, I have some AI properties. I'm not sure where I'm going with them or
Mhm.
if they could ever be monetized, but like for instance, centering prayer
Mm.
.ai, where you can talk it through, it knows about you and you can use it to help you come up with a sacred word for that centering prayer practice.
Mm.
Or I have another agent that I'm creating, GPT that I'm creating, and it's called JesusJournal.ai. And
Okay.
so it's a verbal two-way journal, and the source material is nothing but the four gospels.
Wow.
So
Okay.
you have an interaction with this agent that is basing off of the four gospels.
Wow.
So I realize any Christians listening to this right now are just going, "Oh man, where are we going with this?" But it's reality, friends. Like I'm getting so much powerful, profound, deep
Mm.
insight into this. That psalm that I read
Mhm.
earlier, I took a photo of it and uploaded it into GPT and had this whole long interaction with chat gpt on advanced voice mode about applying that to my life, that kind of humble,
Yeah.
non-needy approach in my life.
Gold prices have historically risen during economic uncertainty. Visit MindstandGold.com. As you and I were talking before I hit the record button, we were talking about that endless cycle of income for psychotherapists, nurses, doctors, all of those health practitioners, not to mention accessories that you need or pharmaceuticals that you need. And can you talk a little bit about your experience that just in how AI can even help it with maybe you're having a really challenging time mentally?
I'd like to, and I think it's important to give some context on that too.
Sure.
Suffice to say, that second marriage of mine that only lasted 4 years, coincidentally or whatever, she was in this industry.
Okay.
And I got to see someone who went into the psychiatric field with such conviction of a holistic approach
Mm.
and get sucked into the traditional practice. It's such, for anyone who knows any people when they get into their residency at these universities that are supposedly progressive and forward thinking,
Yeah.
but there is a system and there is so much massive money behind it. And
Mm.
psychiatrists, the second you hang out a shingle, you're booked solid for years out.
Is
People
that
are
right?
so desperate to go back to their meds, to their, oh, the next.
Mm.
I remember getting so excited about going to, and just like going to the psychiatrist and, oh, we're going to tweak my meds. We're going to try one more medication.
Mm.
Oh, surely that'll do it this time. So, so I got, now I got to say this, you stinkers out there that take some antidepressant
Mm.
and it works for you. I'm so jealous of you people and you're out there. So I'm not saying that this is across the board. I'm
Right.
talking to those of us who are treatment resistant, who have gone down that road and found that it failed them. It
Yeah.
completely and totally failed them. So, now that I've said all of that as a big giant background, would you re-ask the question?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Uh,
just about being able to,
yeah.
you see that things just, this is just not clicking with me. It's kind of like so many boys in elementary school. Man, it's just not clicking with me. I need something else. And AI actually seems to be a possibility for some help.
So what you think we were referring to is this experience,
Hmm.
and again, if you go to my YouTube channel, at Joe Van Wyk, this is the most recent video that I dropped, and well, actually, it won't be when you drop this,
Right.
but just search for adios therapist Hola AI.
Yeah.
And so what I described was my experience with this clinic that I go to. And for people who are, not quite able to pay for a private doctor, and just the whole experience from the pre-electronic thing that I had to answer, answering gender questions, the most invasive, horrible, like to me, customer service experience, wanting me to divulge all of this private information, then going to the clinic, then being in that sick, sick, sick atmosphere, people getting free health care that I have to pay for that aren't even in this country legally. And there's a whole system of funding, funding, funding. That doctor that I saw, I'm not saying that his heart isn't in the right place, but he's now part of this system.
Mm.
There's funding. There are the doctor lobby, the pharmaceutical lobby, and these nonprofits that are tied in with the politicians. And there's this cycle, cycle, cycle of money. So what it comes down to, I don't have an axe to grind so much as I just recognize how low down that ladder I am in that priority versus like
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
working one on one with a coach.
Yeah.
Now that's getting a lot closer to accessible and reality. Like any life coach, any business coach worth their weight in salt is going to be really vulnerable with us.
Hmm.
They're going to tell us about their experience. So there's that. But then this AI experience handles so much of my need to just blah, get it out of my mind, and work through things with kind of a common sense approach. And of course, it's all primed to my needs and my goals and my
Hmm.
reality. There
Yeah.
are ways, like particularly with Chat GPT, that you can set up projects and clusters of chats that
Yeah.
that work as that kind of foundational base of what it's responding on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And teaching it. And I use a different AI program. But I was going to say, just like what you were saying, you can have these clusters so it actually gets to know who you are and can reference back to things. And I've been using the program that I use for quite some time. Let's say 4 or 5 months anyway. And and I have gotten to know each other. And I can ask it about something from 2 months ago, and it'll say, "Oh yeah, well, so in reference to that, let's bring that in as a variable on whatever project it is that we're working on." But I wanted to switch a little bit of gear because you had mentioned the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 as a really good technique. Some people, maybe they deal with a lot of regret looking back, and it's like the pitfalls or demons or mistakes of the past are like way too much in the forefront. And so we need that pattern interruption and that thought interruption. And I think that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, can you describe that a little bit about how that works?
I'd love to. I'm going to turn to that page in the field guide
Yeah.
because it's towards the front of the book. And this really probably could have very well saved my life. I remember the first time
Hmm.
um, when this was about 5 years ago, and I was so distraught. And I pulled over my truck. I wasn't here in town. I was in another town, and I pulled over my truck, like just facing some woods, and called 988.
Hmm.
And that person on the other end of the line walked me through this. I remember to this day looking through my windshield and the experience of just being on the phone with her. And
Yeah.
so, needless to say, if you're really dysregulated, you got to get somebody on the phone.
Hmm.
Okay. A couple videos past, I published a video on God Ain't Done With You Yet. And I called it Suicide in Spring. And I talk about
Hmm.
this power that spirit of suicide can come over us. And it's really critical that you
Hmm.
stand up against that, because you can get lulled into that spirit. I
Yeah.
know that sounds heavy, friends, but it's this shift that happens in one's mind that actually convinces them to do the unthinkable.
Hmm.
And so, ironically, when we're in those situations and spiraling like that, no intellect, sometimes, I mean, yes, pray, of course, and rebuke and bind and whatever, but sometimes we just need to get present enough in our system to take us out of this insanity because we're in a hallucination. We're
Hmm.
completely detached from our senses. So the 5 4 3 2 1 is there. What are 5 things you can see,
Yeah.
4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So, you know, creek flowing, blue rag, red phone thing on my screen, and Michael's face, and on and on and
Yeah.
on. So things I can feel touching. And you would just be amazed at just doing this silly exercise. You can't stop till you're all the
Yeah.
way. And the taste thing, if you don't have a mint with you, then lick your arm because your skin kind of has a taste to it. Okay.
Yes.
Um, but this is, I mean, when you talk about the suicide hotline kind of thing, these people aren't deeply trained interventionists, right? So
Right.
what is it that they're going to train them with? They're going to train them with the most rock solid, universally applicable thing. And what I described, that is mindfulness. We
Hmm.
tend to want to make mindfulness some mysterious thing, but don't you know that, Jesus and the disciples, they lived a really mindful life. They were so connected to their
Yeah.
food and the elements and whatever. They didn't have a lot of this
Yes.
non-mindful stuff to
That's
distract.
right. They had other problems to deal with, but there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Like, what a conversation! I can't believe the time just like sails by. And as Kermit the Frog said, I think time's fun when you're having flies. And for the rest of us, time flies when you're having fun. So I'd like to remind our listeners that Joe does have a great website and his YouTube page where you can find some great resources to help you on your own journey. And of course, you can access the website at www.joevanwyk.com. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights.
Thanks, everybody. Just remember that God ain't done with you. There's this very specific purpose on your life. Read
Mm-hmm.
Psalm 139 that, God formed you in your mother's womb, and every day of your life
Yeah,
was recorded in his book before any of them came to be. So
that's
go to joevanwyk.com, and there's a free course there too. And I mean, really free. Like you just click and you're there. It's not a big giant click funnel every
nice.
day. So I hope we'll see you there, and y'all don't forget to get out there and shine your light and bless someone.
Yes. And one other thing we can take away from the Psalms is that God bottles our tears. So for some of us, he's got some very high, very large bottles, very large bottles.
Right on.
And so thank you, Joe. And thank you to our viewers. We appreciate you joining in on this conversation. And if you haven't already, please share this with 3 of your friends. I'm sure there's at least one name rolling around in that brain of yours of, man, I should send this to Betty or somebody else. And yes, you should. We will both confirm. Yeah, definitely. If you got a name in your head, they would love to hear this. And ladies and gentlemen, I've already said it once, I'll say it again. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your support of this channel. And seize your day, enjoy those sunrises and sunsets, and all the adventures in between. I'm Michael Klassen. Turn everyday teaching moments into a valuable lesson about long-term wealth preservation. Gold prices have historically risen during economic uncertainty. The time is now. Visit myinstantgold.com today and secure your family's future with your first gold purchase. Your children's financial future is too important to delay. Start their golden future at myinstantgold.com.